Hey there, Mel Abraham here, the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Entrepreneur Solution, and the founder of Thoughtpreneur Academy, where we teach you how to capture, package, and monetize the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience, and expertise that you have so you can go out there and have greater impact, greater freedom, and greater income. And welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur Solution Show. In this episode, we're going to dig into one aspect of becoming an influencer that is huge, and that's your reputation. What are you known for, and how do you get known the right way? How do you manage that reputation so it becomes not only your reality, but your market's reality? And so that's what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to talk about the Reputation Navigator. If you want to get the action guide, do me a favor. Just go to melabraham.com/session 095. Download the action guide so you can work along with me. If you happen to be out and about, you're listening to me on your earbuds and you aren't by your computer, then just text me. Text me to 38470, my legacy, one word, to 38470, and I'll send you the download link so you can make sure you get the action guide with this episode. So let's jump in. Let's look at this. Let's start to understand, what does it take to build that reputation? What is a reputation? What are the aspects of that, and how do we manage that? All right, because here's an interesting thing that, I've always said that the good news is that it takes a while to build a reputation, and it takes a moment to destroy it, especially in today's social media environment. There was a report this morning about something that one of the airlines did, and it was reported, but it was taken out of context. And here you have this company that's getting hit, their reputation's getting hit and just beat up on social media, and a lot of it was jumped to conclusion because they didn't have all of the facts. And one of the things that you need to do is get out in front of that message. You create the message around who you are, how you're represented, and what you do, and that starts to build that reputation. Because here's the thing, when you talk about a reputation, when you talk about being known the right way, when you talk about that element, if we don't get this right, there's a challenge. Okay, when we screw this thing up, ultimately what people won't buy for you, because if we have a bad reputation, I mean, how many of you, think about this for a moment, how many of you, when you decide that you're going to go somewhere, you go and look at Yelp reviews? You go and look at the reviews on Amazon. You go and look at the reviews of the products. And what happens is that reputation gets ahead of the purchase decision of your buyer, your client, your customer. And what happens is people just won't buy from you if you've got a bad reputation. And this is something that we've got to manage, especially if you're going to be an influencer, someone that is trying to impact people's lives. I mean, when you look at an influencer, my perspective is that you know something. You've got information, knowledge, wisdom, expertise, and experience that can solve people's problems or help them get to their dreams. But in order for them to buy from you, to be part of that journey with you, they got to know that they can trust you, and that's part of that reputation. So if we don't get it right, people aren't gonna come to you. They're not gonna buy from you. If we don't get it right, they're not going to trust you, and that's really the reason they're not buying from you. So ultimately, what we're trying to do is build trust. In fact, I remember having this conversation when I had a full-service accounting firm. Many of you know that I'm a CPA by education. I had a full-service accounting firm, and I remember having conversations with my then partners about selling the business, not the business, but getting work in and going and meeting with clients. And I remember one of my partners looking at me saying, well, Mel, selling a tax return is really not that easy. And I said, well, therein lies your mistake, because we're not selling tax returns. That's a commodity. What we're selling is trust. That's the product. So we need to get really clear on the product that we're selling, especially in the influencer space. If you're asking someone to say, hey, I know something, come along with me, it's going to help you, they got to trust you. So one of the products, like it or not, you may say, well, I do things on leadership, I do things on corporate culture, I do things on fitness, I do things on wellness and health, I do things on speaking, like I do speaking and influencers and marketing, that kind of stuff. But embedded in there, you're also selling trust. If they don't trust you, they won't buy from you. And so that becomes a big issue. In the end, if you don't have a good reputation, if you're not known for doing the right things the right way, and often they're just going to break up with you, okay? And you'll never hear from them again. And worse than that, the audience, the marketplace might hear from them by them, trashing your reputation, by going out and posting bad Yelp reviews, by going and doing things on social media. I remember, and this is it's a strategy too to get attention. I remember we had an issue at one of the hotels, at one of the higher level hotels that we stay at when we travel, and it was a problem, and they really just mistreated us. And when I tried to talk to the management about it, they didn't want to hear it. So I simply posted it on their Facebook page, and within 30 minutes, I had a response. We're in a different world today. We're in a different environment today. Access to doing things, to getting your reputation, building your reputation, as well as destroying your reputation is easy today. If someone has one of these, a smartphone, in their hand, they have a whole publishing empire, because in their hand they can do video, so they have their own TV station. In their hand they can do audio, so they have a radio station. In their hand they can do text, so they have a publishing platform. And so we need to realize that we need to manage that messaging, manage that reputation at a much higher level than we ever had before. Because if we don't, it becomes a problem. If we do, here's the thing that happens. We have a lot of return customers, because just as much as they may talk about the bad, it seems like they talk about the bad more than they talk about the good. But those that talk about the good become your cheerleaders. They become your champions. They fight for you. I think back on years ago when Cliff Bar was going through when there was the peanut recall and all that stuff, because they had such a good reputation and relationship, not only with their customers, but with their team members, their employees, they all rallied behind them, and they became the cheerleaders and champions to find new ways and to help the company out. And so what we really want to do is manage that reputation so we have lots of return customers, and even more than that, they become the champions for the business. It builds goodwill, because people actually realize, and they look at it and they go, wow, this company cares about me. They do things differently. And it becomes the little things that you have. My wife and I were just out shopping recently, and she purchased something from a shop for a wedding that we have to go to. And I don't know, 4 days later, she gets a thank you card, a handwritten thank you card in the mail. How many are doing that today? People will send an email. What about writing a handwritten note and saying thank you? I mean, think about the goodwill, the nature of what that does for you. And then the third thing that happens when we get this right is that loyalty becomes a premium. That they become, like I said, champions and cheerleaders. That loyalty for them, it becomes really, really well seated. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't be unseated. Because if they start to, like, I think that Apple is struggling a little bit right now with the loyalty, because people are starting to question the quality of their products, the innovative nature of them since Steve Jobs died. But realize that if we do the things the right way, we create a level of loyalty that puts you and makes you as a premium. So if that's really what we understand, the importance of creating a good reputation, to be known in a certain way, then what do you need to know to make that happen? And so what are the principles? Here's the key principles that I think are really important to understand when you're building, managing, and preserving your reputation, or how you're known. First is perception is a reality. I remember back in the day when I was first starting out to do my strategic consulting and the expert witness work and all of that type of stuff, and I would go out and I would meet with potential clients and potential referral sources, bankers, attorneys, CPAs, and none of them would hire me, because they looked at me and they said, you haven't done much of this, and since you haven't done much of this, we don't want to take a chance on you. And I thought, gosh, if no one hires me, I'm never going to get a chance to do it. I mean, it's frustrating. I mean, think about it. You're knocking on doors, and every door they say no. And so I went out and I said, well, what's the next best thing for me to do? So I started speaking. I started speaking on the topic. I started writing on the topic. I started doing all of those things. And every time that I was doing that, and this is back in the day before the internet, so I was doing physical press releases to papers and industry rags and newspapers and magazines and all of that, and sending it to contacts and sending it to the referral sources. And they kept getting the stuff of me speaking and writing and doing all these things, and I became a resource to them. But what really happened is that I created a perception of being out there, of doing the work, and really creating that perception, which ultimately became the reality in their mind. Now, I had to perform. Once they hired me, I had to deliver the results, which I did. But in the process of building that, my question to you would be this: what's the perception in your market's mind, in your market's heart? What's the perception? Because that's actually the reality. No matter what you think it is, we go to the marketplace and say, what's their perception of you, of your product, your service, your delivery, your results? And if they don't know you, or they don't trust you, that's the reality, even if it's not well-founded. And we need to change the perception to change the reality. So let's manage the perception, because that is the reality. The second is I want to shrink the gaps. The gaps in their thinking is what I'm talking about. So if they see you one way, this is like an actor who's been typecast as a villain, and now they want to go be the hero. Some actors have had a problem bridging that gap. Other actors go from bad to good, and actresses go from bad to good and are playing all different parts. And so it becomes a challenge. The question is, how do you take that perception gap and shrink it? And the way part of that is going to be delivering results and doing some things that are extra to do that. So I want to shrink the gaps in their thinking. So what is the reality and what is talked about are one and the same, and I manage it. So hopefully that makes sense. Then the third principle is to understand this, is that you need to control the active voice. The other way to say this is I need to get ahead of the message. In other words, I need to control the messaging. When I was out there building my practice and building the work that I do, which literally built an international following and an international reputation over the years, that allows me that as today even, I've been doing this now for a long, long time, decades. I don't even want to tell you. But to the point where I actually am not really marketing anymore, that part of my services, phone still rings. Got a phone call from people just this past week on a big project. We're talking 5-figure, 6-figure projects that they're calling because I controlled the messaging in the marketplace. And what do I mean by that? I was putting the messaging in the marketplace. I was speaking, I was writing, I was doing press releases, I was doing all of the things. So when they looked me up, when they said, who the heck is this guy, Mel Abraham? What they saw was the messaging that I created. Now, once again, I want to be really clear. I'm creating the messaging, but I'm backing the messaging up with the results that are consistent and congruent with it. I'm not saying to create some false image out there and then don't back it up. We need to deliver. So I want to be really clear about my perspective. I want to control the messaging that's out there that is based upon the truth of what I can deliver, and then deliver it. Because when you have the messaging out there and then you deliver based on that messaging, now what happens is that you're talking about it, the results are talking about it, and your customers are talking about it. So you've controlled the active voice in the process. So here's how we got to look at this element of reputation. And I use a framework called the Reputation Navigator. And there's a lot of different areas. There's 3 things that we need to manage our reputation, but our reputation goes into a couple of different directions. We need to think about who we're managing it for and what elements of it that we're managing. It's not one and the same. It's not just one reputation that we're managing. We're actually managing a bunch of reputations, 4, 5, 6 different reputations that will combine to make your overall reputation. You'll see this when we unpack this framework called the Reputation Navigator. In order to do that, I'm going to jump to the iPad. We're going to draw this thing out. We're going to make it come to life for you. So let's jump to the iPad and get this done. So here's the Reputation Navigator. And like I said, we're going to manage our reputation to a group of folks, the who. Because a lot of times we talk about reputation and we think it's just our customers, but it's not. There's a lot of what I would call stakeholders, people that are impacted by that reputation. And so we need to consider each and every one of them. So what I would ask you to do is really to score yourself in these areas, which really starts to bring this thing home. So if you look at yourself and say, okay, so the first one is community. So my question to you is what's your reputation in your community? What is the community saying about you? Now the community could be the community at large, and that's typically how I look at this, because then we'll talk about customers and everything, because a lot of times when you think about reputation, you're solely thinking about customers. So the first is really about the community. The second is about the suppliers, okay, your vendors, the people that you do work with, because you know what? There's a reputation there. If you're really nice to your customers, but you're really crappy to your suppliers, guess what? It's a problem. And sooner or later, it's going to spill over. So I don't believe that we can treat two different groups two different ways and think that it's going to work well. So community, suppliers, and then the next is the owners. So in some cases, it may not be your business. For instance, I sit on a board of directors of one of the board of directors I sit on, and I'm not a shareholder. I'm simply a director and a consultant, which means that I'm serving the shareholders, the owners. So what is my reputation with the owners of the company, the shareholders of the company? Then this one, which it seems obvious, which is where people go to begin with, is called customers. What's our reputation with our customers? And then the last thing that a lot of times we don't even think about, but I think is hugely important because it impacts the customers, is what's our reputation with the team? And I'll be the first one to tell you that back in the day when I first started and I became a partner in a firm and I had staff and all that, I was a jerk. I mean, I was pardon the expression, an ass to deal with because I didn't understand that. And it was like, you're here to work for me. That's crap. That's not true. Okay? We're here to do this thing together. We're on a mission together. And I learned the hard way, but I learned. And so if we're not managing these things properly, we have an issue. So these are 5 different levels of reputation that you need to manage. Now the hopes is they're all great. And I'm going to give you an exercise to play this out. And that is this: to think about what we call traffic lighting it. And so if you think of a traffic light, and I look at this and I say, okay, if I look at my community, or maybe I'm going to take each one of these and say, am I absolutely off the charts, got a great reputation? If I am, then I'm going to color it green. If I'm kind of mediocre, I think I have a decent reputation, then I'm going to color it yellow. If I haven't done anything to build that reputation, then I'm going to color it red. But watch what happens. Let's assume that, for instance, I've got a great reputation with my community. I got a good reputation with my customers. You know, I'm okay with my suppliers, and I'm okay with the owners. But you know what? I treat my team like crap, and I start to color these things in. Then you look at it and you start to say, I know where I need to improve. Now, I had said that there's a couple ways to do this. We get a chance to understand how to build this out and who this is for. And we started with the who. Now let me talk about the what, and then we'll talk about how do you manage it, okay? Because down here is the what. because not only is there a reputation to who, there's a reputation in what areas of your business. And so when we look at this, you start to realize that reputation is built in a lot of different ways. For instance, the first thing is, what's my reputation from a financial standpoint? My bankers and my bills and all of that. What is that reputation? Do I have a good financial reputation? What is my reputation when it comes to relationships? Okay? The relations that I have with maybe unions or vendors and that type of thing. So there's different functions within the organization that we need to consider. Same thing. What's the reputation? And this is where we mostly look at, is for the quality of the work or the quality of the results, the quality of the product. But there's more to it than that. If I've got great quality products, but I've got financial problems because I'm not paying bills on time, or I've got banking issues, that's a problem. I want to have this holistic reputation that really is built on all aspects, to the who and to the what. Then this element of governance, which we could talk about as ethics. Am I known from an ethical standpoint to have integrity, or how we operate? When something happens, do we do the right thing? And it doesn't matter. And what I mean, do the right thing in the context of even if it costs us money. And I've watched some of my friends who are they've got this down pat, and they don't care if it costs them money, if it's the right thing to do. And I think that's the right way to do business, because in the long run, it pays back in spades. The last area of this is social. What is our social capital? What does our social reputation look like? And once again, I think we go back to this in the same way and start to color this in the ways that we look at it and say, gosh, financially I'm not doing well. Socially, I've got a couple of things that are going off. My quality's good, so people are coming to me for good quality. I'm trying to do things the ethical way, and I could probably improve on my relationships. And you see how you start to look at this and go, wow, the areas of yellow and the areas of red, I got to work on. So how do you work on this? And here's how I would tell you to do this. It's really starting to understand what elements go into a reputation. And it's basically 3 elements, and that's it. The first is this, is understanding what you say. So the things you say start to really have an impact on what's going on. So I got to manage the things that are said out there. I got to manage the things that I do, and I got to manage the things that are seen. That's how a reputation is built. Because understand this, is that when I say things one way and I do things the same way, so in the process of saying and doing the same thing, because it's one thing to say something, but then to do something different, I build trust. And so if we look at it in that context, what we need to look at is there a consistent word, a consistent messaging that is consistent with the actions we take? Then when you look at it in the context of, if I do one thing and they see me doing those things, how does that change our reputation? Well, in that context, what really happens is that you become a role model. And when you become a role model in an industry, people refer to you. You become the standard. You become the gold standard. You become that person that is out there. And they say, if we want to have a great reputation, we want to emulate them. So you become the role model. When you do things a certain way and you're seen doing those things, now all of a sudden you become a role model. And then when you say the right things and you're seen doing the right things in that process, that's what gives you your notoriety. That's what you get known for. And in the end, it's the combination of this. what you say, what you do, what's seen, how you build trust, how you create notoriety, the kind of role model you are in all of the elements of the who and all of the elements of the what that create your reputation. And so this is the Reputation Navigator. We need to manage the three things: say, do, seen. We need to manage it to 5 core groups: the community, the suppliers, the owners, the customers, and the team. And then we need to manage it in 5 core operational areas: financial, relationships, quality, governance or ethics, and social. When we do that effectively, then that whole outer ring is going to be green, and you got yourself a stellar reputation. When you have a stellar reputation, you build champions, you build loyal followers, you build cheerleaders, and you build a following that people are willing to pay a premium to be part of it. So I hope that serves you. I hope that makes sense to you, that you take this Reputation Navigator and say, how can I score myself and how can I push myself up? What am I doing in each of these areas? Say, do, and seen to each of the people, the groups, and the who, the factions, and the what, to make that happen. And so hopefully this will help. If you truly want to be an influencer, this is something that has to be managed. This is something that you need to work through and actively manage. You don't leave it for chance, because the industry, the competitors, the other folks out there will create a reputation for you, and it probably won't serve you. So get ahead of it. Remember, perception is the reality. If you are out there to be an influencer, in order to be an influencer, you need to be a market leader. In order to be a market leader, you got to have a great reputation. You got to build that notoriety in a space, in a way that serves. So that's the key. So let's get out there. Let's build that reputation. If you haven't done so already, download the action guide. Let's start working on it. Go to melabraham.com/session095 to get it. If you're not at your computer and you listen to this on your earbuds or something like that, or in your car, just text me safely. One word, my legacy, no spaces, to 38470. I'll send that to you. Do me a favor, subscribe. Let's build this together. Let's get you out there as the market leader. Let's get you out there as an influencer. Let's put you out there positioned as the go-to person that is highly paid, highly sought after, because you get great results and you treat people the right way. If you have questions, or you're having challenges or frustrations, you want me to help you out, position you and help you out, just go to askmelnow.com, leave me a message. We'll make sure we get it on an upcoming episode. And then one last thing, would you do me a favor? Just a gift. Share this with a friend. Share this with a friend. Let's get this information out there, and leave comments. Let me know, and let me be here to serve you. I'd love to serve you. I love being on the journey with you. See what we can do together. Let's make a difference. Let's get you out there, and let's give the world what they're looking for, which is a new paradigm, a new way of thinking, a new way of living. And you've got some tools, you've got some knowledge, you've got some expertise, and you've got some stuff that can serve them. So let's get it out there in a big way, all right? Until we get a chance to see each other in the next episode, may your vision be grand, your journey epic, and your legacy significant. See you soon. Cheers. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you subscribe so you get access to all of Mel's business and success tips. And if you like this episode, share it with a friend. If you have a specific business or success question, you can ask it at www.askmelnow.com. Remember, it's all about being bold, dreaming big, and living life your way. Because the world needs you. Until the next episode, may your vision be grand, your journey epic, and your legacy significant.